So I'm Logan Pribbeno. I'm the fifth generation on Wineglass Ranch in Imperial, Nebraska. Imperial, Nebraska is in far southwest Nebraska, so we're only about 20 minutes away from the Colorado state line, so pretty limited rainfall environment. And I found that stalkers are a wonderful tool. One of the benefits is that it's a fairly drought resistant enterprise, and I just put this together to share with y'all. What is Wineglass Ranch? Well, Wineglass Ranch is a team of 7.5 full-time employees. That's the crew at the annual Christmas party down there. We run about 1,500 cows. We take in cows, custom cows on corn stalks. We run about 5,000 stalkers and 5,000 acres dryland farm ground. We don't utilize any irrigation under our control, but we do rent irrigated ground for different grazing things. None of it farming though. Our annual precipitation is about 19.5 inches. An interesting note about Wineglass is that it has primarily been maternal. This from my dad, who's at the back in the picture there to me, is the first father to son transition in the 5. It's mostly been maternally passed down. So this is the first paternal, maybe the only, because I have 2 daughters, ages 3 and 6. So I always caveat that the future is female. I also have a couple people to thank. There's not an idea on this that is mine. John Maddox was particularly open when I moved back 10 years ago. I think the first year I was here, he mailed me all of his SOPs. And he's just been very open and kind, and really taught me a lot, as did Homer Buell, my dad, and I'm a vicarious reader. Alan Nation, I've read every word he's ever written, and most of these ideas I think are some combination of the 4 of them. So with that, we'll get into it. So here's kind of an overview of what we'll be covering. We'll buy a 500-pound natural baller out of Wyoming or Montana. And if you look at where we are on the map, Wyoming and Montana are the closest cow-calf area that we can pull out of. And when that calf comes to us, it doesn't go by a lot of feed yards to get to us. So it's kind of a honey hole for us. I don't think that's universal to the state of Nebraska. I think it's a bit of a value for us. And we specialize in natural. It's what we do at Wineglass. We've been natural on our cow herd for a decade or even more. I mean, we were natural before there was even a designation, just because of a way to cut costs. And we always run conventional. We run conventional in the past, and you can't just show up. I learned this the hard way as well. We bought a lot of steers in January, weaned steers out of Ogallala, conventional steers, and they don't necessarily work. As Halden Clark said last week, you just kind of make the world go around, and that's not the goal for us here at Wineglass, or I'm sure for most of the other people listening. So they'll go on to a rented irrigated corn stalk field, then they go on to wheat pasture, then we'll go to native range. We'll sell the heavy end off of the range, and then we'll take the lighter end to cover crops to kind of get them up to a 9 or a 10 weight, and we'll sell a natural 9 weight yearling in September. The premiums for that over the last couple of years have been really good. One of the questions I had was a question about buy-sell marketing. It's really important, and it fits in here, but it doesn't fit into my presentation. The buy-sell thing is at a minimum like a 4 or 5 hour presentation that I'm just not going to be able to get into. But I just wanted to, if you are thinking about getting into the stalker world, I do recommend training. Wally Olson has a very good school, and it's a 2-day school. I attended it this fall. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in just understanding value in the cattle market. So anyway, this is it. I could do this presentation in 2 slides. This would be the first slide. To supplement or to run stalkers in this state, they require supplementation most of the year. I mean, there's 2 months out of the year that they really don't need supplement. to summarize Mike McDonald's presentation, as a stocker operator, you supplement with distillers in some form at any price. Like it just like it just doesn't matter. Like distillers could double and it's still a good value. And so yeah, we supplement with distillers until they take it from our cold dead hands. And this is our leverage tool. It allows for us conceptually to increase our utilization and still achieve performance. And you guys can see too, there's we've got the 2 bins. We have a 3rd bin as well. But this is just a nice sunset picture. And you can see that we supplement in large quantities using those fertilizer spreaders. That particular one was made in 1989, which is very often older than the people operating it. And it's fed out a lot of distillers. My dad bought it for $500 20 years ago, and I don't know if there's a machine on the planet that's produced a better ROI for a business. So that's important. Supplementation is key, and to run stocker successfully in this state, I firmly believe that it's tied directly with supplement. I would supplement with wet distillers if I could. It's just not particularly practical for wine glass range. So getting into the grazing. So you wanted to run stockers. Well, welcome to the club. Here's what it looks like. It looks like a lot of fun, right? This is steers are not cows. They behave different from cows. They're not having fun right here. We're losing. This is Winter Storm Xanto a few years ago. It was a very unpleasant few days for cattle and people in western Nebraska. But it can look like this sometimes. It doesn't always look like this, but it's work. Stockers are work, and a steer is not a cow. There's some of the economics. I purposely pulled up the winter of 16 and 17, which was cold and snowy. It was one of the 10th snowiest winters in the history of weather recording in western Nebraska. We undersupplemented. We only were supplementing 2 pounds per head per day. This did not work well, and I'm purposely pulling this up because I like to share things that don't work as well as things that do work. What we learned from that is it's hard to run stockers when it's super cold and snowy. And one of the other things I learned is your winter is 200 days. If they do a 0.77 for 200 days, the 100 days that you have them in the summer isn't enough to make up for it. And so the winter performance is a lot of days in our baller to 9-weight program. And so we really need to focus on the winter performance. And Mary and Jay were hitting on that, or directly covering it last week. And I'll reiterate that the wintering is almost more important than how you summer, because there's just more days involved. This is where the magic happens. This is wheat pasture, and it is one of my favorite things about being a stocker operator. As soon as we get everything out to wheat pasture, the whole crew just collectively takes a sigh of relief. It works well. There are challenges for sure, but in general, this is one of the more enjoyable aspects of it. We primarily graze rented irrigated wheat pasture, and we are working with some great farmers right now. We finally got a couple guys that are working with us on a regular basis, and it's a great partnership. On the wheat pasture, we'll typically do a 1.5. Last year was the best wheat pasture year we had, and we did about a 2.0. The worst wheat pasture year we've ever had was several years ago, and that was more like a 1.2, 1.35-ish, depending on condition. Market rate for wheat pasture in this part of the world is about 75 cents per head per day, no care. So you're providing fence and care at that rate, which provides about a 50-cent cost of feed. What's cool about this is it's for us, it's all rented ground. So it's an expansion opportunity, which is big. We're not surrounded by a bunch of grass, but we are surrounded by a bunch of irrigation. So the potential here is limitless, and it's a great drought hedge. We don't water it up typically. Sometimes we'll water it in the fall, sometimes in the spring, not very often, but wheat's tough, and you're going to get some grazing out of it, whether you're in a dry spell or really droughty condition or not. It's a tough annual that is going to produce some no matter what. And the other thing about wheat pasture is April feed's expensive. It's very expensive for me to feed a cattle in a feedlot for April. I can afford to feed them when I'm taking the ball off of them, but taking them off of corn stalks and locking them back up for about 45 to 60 days, it's expensive. And what we find is we kick them out of the lot and they go backwards for weeks, not just 1 week or 2 weeks. They almost forget how to graze. And with wheat pasture, they're coming off a wheat pasture onto the native range. They're already like in fourth gear. So, they did like a 1.5 or like a 1.75 off a wheat pasture. You turn them out onto native range and they're already in gear and they're going to do a 1.75, whereas your feedlot critters are going to back up on you. And that's why I say this is one of the more enjoyable, one of the more magic aspects of running stockings.
Logan, can I ask you 2 questions about grazing your wheat pasture?
Yes.
My first one is, do you have like a set point of when you decide to turn out? Is it a date or is it something about what the wheat looks like?
Good question. We are we winter different. Our wheat comes out of dormancy earlier here in southwest Nebraska. I can really count on March 20th. I can turn out onto wheat or rye about March 20th, and it hasn't let me down yet. We do go out about this time of year and kind of scout how it looks to determine if we should do some delayed turnout. That date is pretty steady. What we do vary is our stocking rate, and our stocking rate varies wildly. And this was a big learning curve for us. And I've screwed it up enough times that I can kind of go look at wheat pasture, and I've learned how to read it the hard way. It's cost me a lot of pain and money and many things. And it's in general like a 1.5 steers to almost as much as a 2.5 to 3. Like a 1.5 would be wheat that doesn't look that great, maybe in a dryland setting. And like the three steers to an acre would really be hoofing it. Maybe that'd be a quicker graze out, like on some really good established rye that you got 100 pounds down and it's fertilized. So the date is not as flexible as our stocking rate, and I'd be happy to dive into the stocking rate issue because it varies wildly. But for now, I'll switch on to. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, my other question was, do you have feed cost to gain on there? I was just curious. Do you just supplement mineral, or do you provide any other supplements? Do you not provide anything?
We'll typically put some hay wagons out for like with straw or corn stalk, just to kind of be some sticker in the gut. We do provide it's very important that you provide a special, I can't remember what they add to the mineral, but the mineral that you use on wheat is special. Not the real expensive stuff, but there's just a couple things that you need to add to it.
Probably is.
Yeah, I think that's it. Native range. On the range, this has worked for us year in, year out. We have run group sizes up to 3,000 in a group. I kind of had to do it. It was great for the grass, and it was a very cool thing to be a part of. It wasn't the best thing for the animals. And so we backed it off. And right now we think that anywhere between 700 to 800 up to like 1,200 to 1,300 yearlings per grazing group is the best compromise between grass, growing grass in your rotational grazing system, and then, still getting good animal performance. 3,000 there are problems every day, in every hour in a group of 3,000, and it's a fraction less into a group of 1,200. Regarding drought, one of the questions I had was, what does our drought strategy look like? Are there critical dates? And we do. We have a critical decision date of May 30th. And May 30th, if we are less than 90% of average rainfall, we start to plan for our action date of June 30th. So if on May 30th we're at this point, we tell ourselves in 30 days these following actions are going to occur, and it's destocking in various manners. In particular, the top end of the yearlings. So that's kind of the first thing that goes is those heavyweight yearlings. So they're eating the most, and their value of gain is the lowest. So you keep your light end and sell your heavy end. And I just with drought in Southwest Nebraska, we're surrounded by irrigated cornfields, and we're blessed in that our winter program and many of our winter programs in Nebraska are not necessarily rainfall dependent, and that's not true of many stocker operators or any ranches across the western U.S. It makes it a lot easier what we have to deal with, because we have a virtually guaranteed feed source for 5 months out of the year, and so that's really the answer to drought management at Wineglass Ranch. We do destock the range some, but it's that winter feed that we really rely on. This would I joked earlier that I could do this in 2 slides. This would be my second slide. This is the quality of our range in Southwest Nebraska throughout the years. And you can see that we're different from the sandhills too. Our range falls off. Our crude protein falls off about 30 days earlier. That's something the university found working with John Maddox. And this is just our own testing to kind of quantify it. You can see that we really got, and the red line is our performance. This is what we need for good stocking performance, for good cow herd performance. As soon as we get below the red line, we're below a performance level, and we need to either destock or supplement. And I've related to this, I've received a good question on the questionnaire, and it was, which is more useful was how it went, stocking rate or stock density. And I thought that was a really good question. I wanted to address it here. Stocking rate is good for your first year profit. So the money that you're going to make this year is dependent on your stocking rate. And there are 2 ways you can go on that. But you manage your year with stocking rate, and your stock density is how you manage your 10-year plan. Set stocking is the best tool for animals. If I'm running a piece of ground that is temporary and I don't have any holistic goals on this piece of property. So if let's say I had an 80 far away and I wanted to really have the best herd performance possible, and it was a 1-year arrangement, I would set stock it. If I had a 10-year lease on a large place, the last thing I would do is set stock it, but it costs animal performance. So while it's a good question, there's no actual answer. Unfortunately, it just kind of depends on your goals. But the more long-term family lease it is, will your progeny be ranching it in 50 years? Well, then you really need to be thinking a little bit more on density. And if it's a 1-year arrangement, you really ought to be thinking about stocking rate. And anyway, wanted to address that question. Depends on your goals. So this is our quality. We got a heck of a resource in May and June, don't we? And then it kind of peters off. So when do you want to harvest? May and June. This stockers allow us to do that. In green is when we've always run steers, have for 40 years at Wineglass, maybe not quite 40, but it's always been a part of what we do. So we've never truly been a cow-calf, 100% cow-calf ranch. But in 2017, we were pretty highly cow-calf at the time, and that's kind of what our range looked like at the time. As you can see, it's fairly flat, and it falls off as we go to corn stalks. And then in 2019 was an above average rainfall year. And then 2020 was a below average rainfall year. So you can see that with our stalker tool, we're able to harvest a lot more when it's higher quality. Then you can look at that, that July and August utilization was way down. So we're able to get off of the range a lot quicker than you can with a cow-calf arrangement. And here's what's interesting about 2019. We received 17 inches of precip, which is 13% under average. Our AUMs harvested off the range were 13% lower, which would make sense. With our stalkers, and this is a 1-year data set, so I don't look too much into it, but our beef pounds harvested per acre were up 20%. So we had 13% less days and 20% more beef pounds harvested. So very simple terms, we did less work and made more money. So when you start to think about stalkers as a drought tool or a dryness tool, if you got a bunch of steers out on the native range, a lot of rain is not good, and it's not the best thing that can happen to you. So the nice thing about stalkers is, and we're mostly stalkers right now, and you start the year and you're like, by golly, I hope we don't get above average rainfall this year. It'd be bad for the steers. So it almost helps your psychology. We're dryland farmers too, right? So I don't actually feel that way, but at least we have one enterprise where it's, man, I hope we get average or under rainfall this year. And so that, as a drought tool, the emotion of drought is another big thing. I think in particular, navigating the emotion of drought, having a bunch of steers just takes it from liability to an asset. And that's one of the coolest things about running stalkers. Grazing management, so how we manage the range at Wineglass. We're second generation management intensive grazers. My dad started this when I was very young. I've never known anything, and it's been very cool. I know other second generation rotational grazers, and we never had that self-doubt and other people doubting you, and so you're able to kind of build on it a little bit. And I think talking with these guys, there's a whole nother future to it, but this is where we're at today. So locally, the NRCS recommends about a half AUM an acre. What's more typical is like a 0.75, I think is what it would be at an average ranch. Before we had mostly stalkers, my dad was able to really pretty quickly get up to a 1.0 animal units an acre harvested back in the 90s. It took years, but after 3 or 4 years into it, he was able to get to a 1.0. And with stalkers, we've been able to get another 0.2 AUMs out of it. So we're harvesting about a 1.3 AUMs an acre now. And how do we do that? And it's important because utilization is, as Burke Teichert would say, one of the most of all the benchmarks, it's the most indicative of a profitable ranch. So our ranch in the 90s, it was developed into many paddocks. It's up to 90 today. There are 2 11-foot stock tanks in each paddock. It's a fully developed ranch, and it always has been that way. So I know it well, and I know the system very well. I'm very fortunate to have something like that. Not everyone gets to play with tools like this, but if you have a tool like this, you can sure utilize it and get a lot more out of it than your average rancher. So 2 11-foot stock tanks in each paddock. Water is so important. The water is more important than the fence. We spend a lot of time on water, and the crew right now, I've got a very good crew, and we're talking a lot about water. We show up at a watering system right now, and our heads, we rank 1 through 10, and if the water situation, and 10 is you could sit in front of the water tank barefoot and you could personally take a sip of water from it. And if we're not at a 7, we need to do something, and that's a stalker tool. So going back to that, I've been Emery Birdwell's place down in Texas, where he is running 5,000. He's junk water, and it hurts him, and it hurts his performance. Most of us here in Nebraska, water is abundant and plentiful, and it matters to stalkers. It matters to cow-calf too, but it especially matters to stalkers in large numbers. And it's a resource that we have, And if you talk to Emery Birdwell, he would love to hear. He did love to hear about our water. And as a stocker operator, if you run on poor water for a little bit of time, you'd really appreciate what we have in Nebraska. So if you are going to run stockers in Nebraska, develop the water, and the cattle pounds will be there to thank you. Some of the economics on the native range. I just want to share this. We'll give our steers are only on there for 65 days, but we'll give them an acre. And I wanted to bring this up. There are many stocker operators in the state that the economics don't work out very well. And what I typically find is it's not very well known how little a calf eats compared to a pair in Nebraska, and it's fractional for sure. And it doesn't work to run stockers and give them the same allocation as a steer. If you're paying yourself fair market rent and have overheads, and there's a lot of caveats to that. But in general, you've got to be tight on your acres to make it work, and that is kind of the key. So, I mean, we'll give a steer 1 acre for about 65 days typically, and it makes for a very cheap feed resource. And the moral of the story is that, if you're a cow man, it's hard to wrap your head around how little like a 6-weight calf eats, but it is fractional in comparison, and your grazing allocation needs to reflect that, and it will help the economics. Forage crop. This has been one of my fun projects since in the 10 years that I've been back. We have a dryland farm, and much of it is up and around the ranch. And so what we'll do as part of our rotation is we'll grow sorghum sedan mix with pearl millet, a few legumes or forbs thrown in, but not just enough to call it a cover crop. It's actually a forage crop. It's a little bit different. People like to debate whether cover crops work or not. And I think that's an accurate debate. My forage crops, they absolutely economically work, and I demand that they pay for themselves year one. So I am building soil life, and I'm doing some good things here, but I'm an economist. I am an environmentalist, but I'm an economist before I'm an environmentalist. And so I like to call it a forage crop. Like, for example, my seed cost per acre, my target's about $15 an acre. So you have to be crafty in how you source your seed. You can't just go and buy, a labeled, certified, organic mix and all that. You got to be a little creative in how you source it. But it works really well with our dryland rotation. We no longer have to apply manure. It's cut our fertilizer use as well. So there's a lot of benefits I'm not necessarily going to get into on this talk. But it works in our dryland rotation uniquely. We're in a limited rainfall environment, a limited resource environment. What I found is wine glass is uniquely adapted for this crop to work in that we can manage thousands of steers effectively, efficiently, and harvest it like a silage crop, and this doesn't work for most people, and I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't think that this has broad adaptation outside of ranchers, professionally run ranches with dryland farm ground. So it fits us in a very unique way. I do have some friends in the area and throughout the state that are making it work on irrigation. I'm not the guy to talk to about that. I've tried it. I've run it irrigated ground and try to make it work, and I under my system and management it couldn't, but I have peers that do, and if it's something that interests you, know that there are people that make it work. Here's the aftermath too. This is just more on the farm side, but I wanted to cover it in that I used to be really worried about the utilization. I spent years trying to figure out how to get my utilization up, and nothing worked. Moderately. For a lot of effort, I could get the utilization up. But the idea here is to graze the best, leave the rest. And I had to personally see it before I had to stop worried about it. Utilization is like 20 to 30%, which when you're running your Excel sheet, just gotcha. Because if you could just double that, you extract so much more out of it, but it just doesn't work. And so this is just a quick slide. That cover is best left there to kind of feed the crop ground. It pays dividends on my farming side later on. And the aftermath, I mean, it's 2 tons of dry matter. I mean, it's a pile. And you have to have your equipment dialed to plant wheat behind it, but we've got a good farm team and we can get it done. Here's some of the economics of the forage crop. We'll do about a 2.5 up to like a 3.0 average daily gain. The interesting thing about the forage crop is it doesn't seem to matter if I get 15 inches of rain annually or 30 inches annually. I tend to get about 100 steer days an acre, no matter what kind of rainfall I get, which actually kind of makes sense when you think about it, because for any farmers here, when you grow a corn crop, half your water is in the grain and half the water is in the plant. And you can grow Iowa corn at 33,000 population right here on my dryland acres. And it can look nice. It looks like a nice cornfield out of Iowa. But when you go to harvest it, there's going to be nothing in the corn side of things. So this does tend to make sense, and that's one of the reasons I think it uniquely works here. Is that we are always going to get not always, but 95 to 99% of the years we're going to get the rainfall needed to grow a really nice big silage crop to graze down, and we'll harvest about 250 to 300 beef pounds per acre average on that. I've done a little bit better than 100 days. I've done a little bit better than 300 beef pounds, but I throw those numbers in there for you guys that pretty much they'll catch it, I think, most years. And it's replacing our chem fallow in our dryland farm rotation. So corn, fallow, wheat. So we'll go corn, forage crop, wheat. This year we didn't drill wheat behind it because of the abnormally dry fall. So this year it's going to be a corn, forage, corn rotation. I'm going to take you back to this. This is really good residue, better than wheat stubble residue. So we have grown corn directly behind this. It is a dryland, or it's a C4 rotation agronomically, which isn't ideal, although the sandhills would arguably be a C4 rotation with a minor wheat C3 in the mix. So I think I'm pretty close to mimicking nature, and I'm really excited to roll out and see what we can grow in a corn crop behind this crop, which is I've done it in the past on different fields, and it looks good because you have good residue to kind of store the moisture if you get it. So I'm just kind of going to review everything, and then we'll open it up to questions. And I think we left plenty of time for questions, which is great. Why run stalkers? For us, it's been an expansion opportunity. The expansion has been the wheat pasture, the winter grazing, and the forage crops. Everyone in Nebraska, I think, is in the same boat. Renting range, like going out and renting, a few thousand acres of ranch land is not only impossible, it's cost prohibitive. It's to the point where you can't get it, and if you can get it, it's so expensive you don't even know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So this has allowed us to expand in a unique way, and where we're at in Nebraska in particular, we're just surrounded by irrigation, and I see going forward this is an opportunity in our area and much of Nebraska, and it's worked. It's this expansion. I was telling the crew the other day, I would rather have 1,000 acres of wheat pasture rented from a farmer than 1,000 acres of additional rangeland, and there's a lot of economics in that as well, and it fits us better. And I think it would, if you're a stocker operator, you're going to get way more excited about someone calling you about wheat pasture. And no one's going to call you about range pasture anyway, so don't worry about it. farming profitability. I experimented early on with these forage crops and pears, and it didn't work really well. It's too high quality of a feed, and so this forage crop works best for a growing animal, in particular like a natural animal, where you can get a higher value of gain. So it's helped with our farming profitability, and there's been it's helped our farming rotation. Having this in our rotation has assisted our yield in our crops following. It's like a manure application without any of the cost. And then the big one is that chart I showed you guys. Sandhills range is outstanding in June, and it is worthless in about September, October. I mean, it's almost no value. I mean, you have to supplement extensively to get any sort of performance out of it. So we want to harvest the range like a hay field. You know, the month that it's at its best, you know, we're out there and we're getting it harvested, and it's allowed us to harvest more beef pounds per acre off this operation. Mistakes. Some mistakes I made along the way, which have been plenty. You know, if you're running steers and you're cow man, you got to be tight on your cows to make money. And wine glass was that way. It was necessity. It was a necessity to get through like the 90s and early 2000s. As we shift into more of a stalker operator, it took me and my dad and a crew to realize that, you know, you gotta spend money on a steer. You're not gonna take a cow mentality, apply it to a steer and have it work. Long ranging a cow, is an absurd thought. I hope there aren't any veterinary reps on here because I might offend. Like it's absurd to long range a cow, in my opinion, and with wine glasses goals. I won't espouse on this absurdity, but you want a long range steer? Yeah, that probably works. You know, like the $40, yeah, might provide a pretty decent ROI. So it's a totally different mindset. And the first few years when I came back and I ramped it up, we were a little too cheap on them, in particular in the winter, supplementing a little too much and stocking too heavy on like the wheat pasture. And Mary and Jay had the presentation 2 weeks ago, and you got to push, and their research showed you got to push them in the winter, and it works best most years. And with a steer, it works best to push it every day of the year, and that's one of Homer Buell's principles. And one of the things he told me 8 years ago: the bigger steer you turn out onto pasture, the bigger it is, the better it's going to do. That flew in the face of the way my dad ran steers. As the compensatory gain is principle number one. And we have enough research now on our own place that Homer was right. You put the bigger the steer is in the winter, the better he's going to do. On Sandhills range, I think it's like the caveat to that, because you don't hear that espoused very regularly, but I think it's a Sandhills range thing. So you got to spend money on them, and you got to push them every day of the year. There are overheads on a steer that are unlike a cow, and you gotta make those overheads work. Kind of in conclusion, when I was thinking about this, the 10,000 foot view, why is, we're mostly a stalker operator. Why have we grown that direction? Think about how many miles of feedlot bunks have gone in this state and in this country in the last 10 years. I don't think it's 100 miles. I think it's thousands of miles. And I think the opportunity in this industry is going to be to take something that is undervalued, like a natural baller or a southeastern baller, something that's undervalued, that a feedlot, so the people with these bunks that they're overlooking, and packaging them up, straightening them out, and creating a really desirable product for those feedlots, and really setting yourself aside. And it's unique in the stalker world. You'll learn more about the beef industry, I think, and the feeding segment as well, what they're looking for as a stock operator, because they're your customer and you're going to get more feedback from them as a larger stocker operator. And I think they had a massive expansion, and I think the stocker operator is going to be uniquely situated in the next 10 or 20 years to service the enlarged feeding industry. And so I'm willing to bet that there are some very real opportunities, in particular in Nebraska, for stocker operators going forward. So that was kind of my, in conclusion, I hope I did good on time. So we got 10, 15 minutes to open up for questions.
Yeah, so feel free to chime in with more questions in the chat. We do have a few. The first one comes from John, and he was asking about your wheat. And so he wanted to know, do you add extra fertilizer to compensate for grazing? And then he also wanted to know, are you grazing out the wheat or are you harvesting it for grain later?
Good question, and good area, John. That's kind of the golden ticket. Most of what we graze is farmed by the farmer, an irrigated farmer. And I tell them fertilizer, and we pay on a per head per day basis. We also rent some stuff that we farm personally, and I fertilize with the starter fertilizer, given the opportunity, real light, 3 to 5 gallons per acre is like a 1034-0, and it pays for itself. And I have the data, on farm data, to kind of back that up. So I encourage all of the farmers that we collaborate with to fertilize with a small amount of starter fertilizer, and it works. On a lot of our own stuff, we will pull off at first hollow stem, but my irrigated guys, very typically not. They're going to go in with an edible bean, a soybean, or a corn, and so we'll graze it down, and then it'll be one tripped and planted very shortly after we get off. So we do a combination of the two, and I always track like the first hollow stem. Varies wildly by year, but in general it's about April 20th, maybe as late as the 25th the last couple of years in southwest Nebraska, and it works pretty well. They go onto the range maybe a week earlier than I want, week to 10 days, but it still works to graze wheat and pull them off before hollow stem. You just got to manage it and be quick about it when you get there.
Excellent. The next question was really about your forage crop that you're harvesting. And they really wanted to know, when you're replacing the chem fallow with that forage crop, does that negatively impact your next crop? And I assume the thought process there is water use.
Yeah, and it does. There is, and we still do some of the chem fallow too. So we have a lot of side-by-side data. It reduces our wheat yield by about not quite 10%, 5 to 8% compared to like a chem fallow field across the way. So it doesn't seem to affect the corn crop, or the milo. We'll grow milo in there as well. It does seem to affect the wheat crop in a minor way, and then on the corn side, it compares. It's comparable to the chem fallow.
So do you think you would see a reduction this year? You're going to put in corn after your forage crop. Do you think you're going to have some minor impacts on your corn crop this year from water use, or do you think that extra cover is going to be a benefit?
That's a really good question, and I'd love the farm side too, and I love where it all intersects. And and we've done this like side by side. So if I'm at an average rainfall year, I've got the residue on my cornfield. I got the matted residue. So if I get the rainfall, I get to keep it because it's thick. And in in an average rainfall year or an above average rainfall year, the yield would be as good as an eco-fallow planted corn. Last year was a below average rainfall year for us, and so I just didn't get the rain, and so I wasn't able to keep it. And so our corn planted into our wheat stubble residue was about 20 bushel better than our corn planted in our forage crop residue.
Interesting. Okay, Rick Rasby wants us to switch topics. He wants to ask about sorting of your stalkers and how many groups do you sort into and when?
Man, that's a great that Rick. Thanks for that question. This is something I learned the hard way, but I got my crew in the next room over here, and they're laughing. You know, we sort steers every week. Running stalkers is sorting, and whether or not you're sorting something that's wrong, you're sorting for size, you're sorting, there's 1,000 things you can sort for, but we sort 1,000 steers every week here. And my main stalker guys, which are in the next room here, we have a saying, and if you ever get down that you have to go sort, you're being silly, because if you're not sorting steers, you're sorting steers. So to answer your question, I mean, you sorting is I could give a presentation. I could give a 1 hour presentation on sorting, Rick. So thanks for asking that question.
All right, Logan, we got another question about your cattle. So wanted to know about your average death loss, and then any major health problems that you've had. And the last part of that question is, how do you market your cattle?
Good questions, Cole. Average death loss. We're playing with natural cat. We get ballers in, natural ballers. I want to get out of weaning with less than 1% death loss is kind of the goal year in, year out. This year we're not there. It takes the fall was funny. We struggled a little bit with the heat. We get them out of Montana and Wyoming. We didn't have ideal conditions. I guess you never do in the fall. So we didn't get out with sub 1%, meaning we're about 2% right now. Last year, our overall death loss was about 2%. So I think when you're running natural ballers for us, 2% for the year is really good, and you're gonna remember that year. I'd be happy this year to get about a 3% death loss, maybe 3.5 would be where we're gonna end up. So I'd say 2%, you're doing good. 3.5 is more on the negative side, and of course with those natural ballers, you have the same tools. So we have to do a lot of prophylactic work. Not we can't just call up a script and kind of fix the problem there. So, but we've been doing it for a while, so we're pretty good at it, I should say. Major health problems. We do buy all of our natural calves double vacked or triple vacked off the range in big groups, and we find that that's key. So we pay for that for sure. For that premium, there's a premium associated with that. We have never had a large scale problem with health problems. We fight pink eye frequently. BRD is an issue. We pull very quick, and we manage our hospital pen in a way that is a Cadillac hospital pen. So when we do have our yard full, we have a grow yard here at headquarters. It's only full in the fall. It's empty now. We walk the pens, not quite daily, but about every other day. And anything that looks wrong, the Bud Williams, your intuition. Like if you look at a calf twice, is your intuition telling you that something needs to happen. So we'll pull the calf, and the first thing we do, we go and put it in what we call our hospital pen. Well, this year our hospital pen was a quarter of cover crop. And it had hay racks in it with alfalfa, had protein tubs. We cube it daily. and we don't give it a shot. So the day that we pull it, we very rarely give it a shot. If we do have to give it a shot, we messed up somewhere. So we try to get into the hospital pen first. And, that program has paid us handsomely over the last couple of years to have that Cadillac style hospital pen, and I can't recommend that enough. And with natural cattle, it's paid for itself 100 or 1,000 times over. When I give a shot of Draxin to a GAP4 natural steer, it's a $340 shot. So the Draxin's $40 a pop. I'm going to charge another $40 for pulling the steer and locking it in and just messing with it, and then I'm losing about $250 on the premium. So to shoot it with Draxin, if I'm going to shoot it with Draxin, it's going to be on his deathbed pretty much. Not literally, but it needs to be sick to the point where it is going to die if we don't give it. How do we market the cattle? We like to sell our natural cattle on the video. Natural cattle are a specialty product, and there's only maybe 100 feeders in the Western U.S. that feed them, and so we need to access them. I really like the sale barn. I don't sell direct. I like to utilize the expertise and the resources of the sale barns. We have sold private through a sale barn, but on my conventional cattle, you always think that you sell them on the video and you're like, man, they did really good. And then for the last 5 years, and then we just buy conventional steers as well. And really like the sale barn route on those.
Logan, can you tell us a little more about how you receive the cattle? Because you kind of talked about your sick pen and your mentality there. What's your mentality for getting those calves in, and how do you manage them to try to minimize disease?
Good question. And that's one of my favorite things. That's just me personally, my favorite part of the stock operator is getting the cattle in. We get them in single ranch pens, sometimes multiple, one ranch and multiple pens. We have enough. We have a couple baller pins, and then we just have like hot wire pins. So it's really not state of the art feeding facility. Our neighbors feed for us. Canyons are down the road. They feed for us, and they do a good job. It's expensive. They charge us plenty, but it's a fair rate. To go feed for a neighbor, it's a hassle. I understand that, but it beats what I could do it for sure. We get them into the pens, and we're a ranch, and we don't have 20,000 bone critters, and so we go and we spend time with them, and we sit with them. We talk to them. We talk a lot about Bud Williams was an absolute hippie, and I always tell people that if you're going to work here and you're going to work around, if you're going to start calves here, you're going to talk to them, and we're going to talk about vibrations, and we're going to talk about all sorts of weird stuff. It gets very weird very quick, but it works. And Bud Williams was the advocate for it. And so we go and we talk, and we give them the 5-star treatment. Actually, we go into the pen, we explain where the water is, we explain what food they're going to have, and we explain to them, what they can expect at their time at Wineglass Ranch and the level of care that can be provided. It's not very similar to checking into maybe like a 5-star hotel. So we kind of ham it up a little bit, and we really try to do that. We think that that's our edge with those natural cattle, and so we really try to do a good job. So it's a lot of animal psychology.